Hi, this is Nancy Norton, and you're listening to Tromedy, the podcast that helps you take your pain and play with it. I'm a former nurse. I got out of nursing for the same reason a lot of people get into it, to save lives. I heal with humor now. I'm a comedian and a speaker about the power of humor. On Tromedy, we talk about some very sad, scary, and dark subjects sometimes, but we lift them into the light with laughter. Tromedy is not a replacement for trauma therapy, but it may help you get by between sessions. This is peer-to-peer sharing. We learn from each other. I'm learning so much, and I want to thank each and every one of my guests and my listeners who often become guests. I hope this podcast is helping you heal at least half as much as it's helping me. Trigger warning, this episode has content related to suicide.
Calling Matt Vogl.
Yo.
What do you say? You want to do it?
Let's do it.
And I'm so excited because I love that I have no idea what we're really going to talk about. We're just going to have a conversation. This is a conversation of peer-to-peer sharing. That's what I call it. Okay. Welcome to Tromedy. My guest this week is Matt Vogl, a comedian, a speaker, and a mental health advocate. Although I feel like I should have said that first. A mental health advocate who happens to be a comedian and a speaker. Hi, Matt.
Well, hi. It's great to be on your podcast. And I don't think I or anyone else will care about the order that you listed those things.
Well, so you and I met doing comedy it would be in the 90s, right?
Yeah, I think it would have been late 90s.
That's amazing.
90, 97, 98, something like that.
And
it's crazy.
It is. It's crazy. Yeah, here it is, 23. And
that's like 60 years ago.
And I'm still doing a joke that you gave me. I was just telling you. I just told you the other day. I don't always do it these days, but once in a while, which is it's based on a true story, the bit that, did you and I both read the same article in the newspaper about a guy that...
No, I think you were doing the bit, and then
you just had this tag that you handed me. Yeah. And it's a sad story about a guy that accidentally cuts off his hand while he's doing some remodeling, but then decides to take himself out with a nail gun spontaneously and shoots himself in the head 19 times. And my little joke was, oh, you'd think they're finishing nails, they should do the job. And then the sad part was, how you make your troubles worse. They got his hand back on, but they could not get all the nails out. And that's when you gave me this line. Should I say it?
Yeah, it's your joke.
Now it's mine. They couldn't get him out, or was it just a really tired on-call doctor who hammered him in and puttied him over? Folks.
I love it. And I almost as much as I love the fact that he did 19.
Oh, I know.
Talk about it. Because my mom raised, 9 quitters, and I would have given up after 2. But that's kind of amazing.
I know. And I know when I first saw that, I thought it was so sad. And then it just started growing. It started making me, and then I started imagining myself as the nurse. So I tell it as if I am the triage nurse that takes the hand in the baggie. And then, I did get written up for laughing when I was in nursing school. And it wasn't right in front of the patient. I mean, it was back when we were doing our after clinical discussions, and I was making jokes because I was so stressed out. And anyway, I got written up. But now I talk about why we absolutely need to laugh about seeing something like a hand in a baggie coming at you, right, and a guy with 19 nails in his head. And this guy, I do that. I might even play the bit here because it is so much longer, and I do talk about his perseverance, which is quite admirable. You're right.
Imagine his head looked like a pincushion or something when he came walking in.
Oh yeah, and Deacon Gray gave me the line, you can't go to the ER with nails half in, half out. People put notes on them. Lost kitten, So yeah, awesome. This is what I love about our Denver comedy community. That's other cities aren't like this. In fact, I have given tags to people and they look at me with disdain, like, how dare you?
Oh my God. Oh my God, that happened to me not too long ago. I won't say who it was, but there was somebody in the comedy work screen room, and I gave, I don't even remember what the joke was. I gave him what I thought was a very funny tag, and it was not like, oh, you should do this. It was just like, hey, if you want, have you thought about whatever? And yeah, I mean, I just got like just these daggers, like, how dare you?
Oh gosh.
You know, yeah, it's like,
I know.
It's like you suggesting, you know, the way that I should cut my baby's hair or something.
Which I do have a couple of ideas. I think a mullet right now on a baby would be so fantastic.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I love it. Like half my act was written by other comics giving me tags, so
it's the best part of it is co-creativity. But not all comedians are like this. And certainly I think when I first started, there was sort of when you're doing a painting, you don't want someone over your shoulder telling you, that tree would look better with a little leaf. So I think there is when we're new or we're like trying to find our own voice, it gets a little crunchy. But man, hey, at this point, anybody have any tags, bring them with old Nance. I write my whole act. Yeah. I'm happy for someone to write my bits. I love entertaining. So
I mean, I'm sorry, but 30 seconds is 30 seconds, you know?
Yeah. Wow. 30 seconds. Yep. That's how we break up our act. Well, Matt, I mean, so I met you as a comedian, and then I think I went off to Nepal to adopt my child, and I was out of the scene for like a decade. And then I think when I got back from Nepal, and then I barely did comedy when he was little, went through a whole trauma drama. And then I didn't see you for a long time. Forever. So what happened? Tell me your journey or any part of it you want to share about how you got to be a mental health advocate. I don't know. Well, I don't know this. I don't know about.
So my background is actually in public health. So I work in healthcare, but I never had like the stomach for direct practice because for all kinds of reasons. But so public health just seemed like a great way to like be in the helping profession, but I didn't actually have to like come into contact with anybody. And really like,
let me be with that for just a second.
Yeah.
So how you, first of all, you got drawn somehow, you had this affinity. You're like, I want to help my community.
Yeah,
what was your degree, or what did you study, or how did you end up there?
So my undergrad degree was actually in philosophy, which makes you thoroughly unemployable. And then I got a job processing these forms at an insurance company and got fired from it. Only job I've ever been fired from. And
congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. But it was like, I mean, it was just this idiotic, entry-level job at an insurance company. I was miserable. So I was just like making my own mischief. And then I got fired. And when you get fired from like the only job you can possibly get, you need to do some soul searching. So I went and I thought, oh, well, I'll teach. My mom was a teacher. And so I did this volunteer teaching thing through the Canadian government. And I went to Winnipeg for a year, and it was so brutally hard. And I was like, I don't know how anybody does this ever for a living, because I was just like exhausted every single day. And so that's when I really started to think like, how can I sort of blend passion, but also not, get into a profession that's going to burn me out in 30 days. And public health just really made sense for all those reasons that, you're working on issues at a population level, not on an individual level. And so I thought, well, this will enable me to have, staying power basically. And so I went to work in Colorado. I moved from Minneapolis at that point, and I'm making this way too long, but
that's okay. I'll cut it all out.
Oh, good. Yeah, just actually cut all of it out.
Well, like I say, this is peer-to-peer sharing, and I think it's interesting to hear the journey and sort of that winding road. I always say all roads lead to you, so I like hearing it. So I didn't know that you had lived in Minneapolis, and then sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So when I was working in public, I was working for this program, this really cool program that does nurse home visits for first-time low-income moms. And I was helping set up that in different places across the country, and mostly in very rural, poor counties, and realized that in every single community where we put this program, the biggest gap was unmet mental health needs for these moms.
Unmet mental health needs were the biggest gap, the biggest, like, that's
hands down, because you could teach moms, about, attachment and bonding and reading their baby and being a healthy mom and all these things. But at the end of the day, if there is depression or anxiety present, with a new mom, you're never going to be able to overcome that unless you deal with it. And so, a depressed mom isn't going to be able to build attachment as effectively. A depressed mom isn't going to have the patience.
I'll testify to that just from my own my own mother's experience and my experience with my mom. And then I had a lot of anxiety at some points, but anyway.
But it's like those babies don't get held as much, or don't get sung to as much, or have as many books read to them, because it's just those little things become just exhausting when you are a mom and you're sort of your self-esteem is gone and you're just doubting your ability, and so this program had these amazing outcomes, but it never could fully realize them because there weren't resources to help these young women deal with their mental health. So I really started to focus my public health career more on mental health, and that just, it sort of led me professionally on that journey. But then at the same time, my own mental health went down the tubes, and I have bipolar disorder, which I had suspected for a long period of time, but had never properly dealt with it. And so it was mostly just, drugs and alcohol, the story you hear so much. And comedy was kind of the worst possible place for me at that time, because I just, it was so easy to just access all the stuff that were counterproductive. And so I was just using a lot, and then, short on sleep and, everything that goes along with this, amazing and really hard thing that we do. And so, and so I made a suicide attempt about 21 years ago.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And was quite close. And so when I decided to get help and deal with it, I found that it was really hard to do that and to continue comedy. And I made sort of this abrupt decision one night. I was working at a Comedy Works South Club, and I was working, there were like 3 shows with Jimmy Fallon before he did his first Late Show. And they were just amazing shows. They were, he was so nice. The audience was just, super hot and sold out on every show. It was great. And I decided when I was driving home, there was like an accident on I-25, and I thought, sitting in traffic, and I just thought, I'm going to do the thing that is hardest of all for comics to do, and that's go off stage on the high note and just do that. And so I decided right then and there at like 2 a.m. on I-25 in a traffic jam that I'm done, and I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off. I'm just going to quit. And I did. And, Wendy down at Comedy Works tried to talk me out of it. And, and she said, you should just cut back to like once a month or something, so you keep your chops going. And I said, no. And in hindsight, I think she was right. But so I just completely walked away from it. And I didn't know if it was going to be a permanent thing or a temporary thing, but it was, 11 or so years that I was away. And for probably the first 9 of those, I didn't step foot in a comedy club. There were a couple of comedians' funerals that I went to.
Oh, I know. That's where I think I saw you the next time.
Yeah, it was probably at Lord's or something. But, and it, I think it's one of those things that there was no other. It was the right choice because there really wasn't any other choice. And so while it was hard to be away from something that we all love so much, in comedy, and it really felt like it just left this big hole in me. It was the right thing because I would have died had I continued doing it. And as I'm now coming back, I'm realizing that being away gave me a perspective on things that I didn't have before. So it was hard being away, but it's good to be back.
So you came back with almost a whole new perspective.
Yeah, it's a long time because a lot happens in 11 years. societally, things like, Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movement happened. And so when I came back into comedy, what was acceptable and expected was completely different.
Oh, yeah.
It just changed so much.
Oh, yeah.
And
that would be a little bit of a culture shock.
I had changed, and so, a lot happens in 10 years. And so I had gotten divorced and remarried, had another kid, had just kind of moved along in my day job career. And, and you just 10 years goes by and you see things differently. And so coming back was a lot harder than I thought it might be. And part of it was, like I was talking with Josh Blue and he had been trying to get me to come back for a while, and I kept saying no. And he said, "Aren't you curious to know if you can still do it?" And really, that's what it. It was like a typical like, "Hey, I dare you." And so yeah, that's the bait that I ultimately took. Was just I want to see if I can still connect with the crowd. And so I went, and he gave me just a guest set in front of him, and I was rusty and my timing was gone and like everything, but it was a blast. And then I got laughs and I was like, oh, yep. Now the heroin just went back into my veins.
Yep.
And here I am. So.
Yeah. And now, well, I'm assuming, and I don't want to assume, but that you have some sort of healthy medication for bipolar, or do you just know how to deal with it differently now? Or I don't know. You don't have to say if you don't want to. I was just curious if there's another variable that makes it.
Yeah. I'm a comic. We're open books, right? Yeah. So it took me a long time to find, kind of the right diagnosis and the right medication. Diagnosing bipolar is sometimes a challenge because, there's not like a test for it. You have to involve a lot of interview about family history and stuff. And it truly was like after having been on wrong medications for a long time that really made things worse. When I got on this drug that I'm on now, Lamictal, also called lamotrigine, it was like a week and a half after taking it. It was like you hear people talk about kind of the light switch moment, where all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, everything I thought was black is white, and vice versa. Like I got this sort of this clarity, and it helped me start, getting my sleep under control. It was great. And then I got on another drug, Seroquel, which it was effective at helping, to kind of amplify the part of the drug that deals with the depression and making that more effective. But it also just, it's associated with unbelievable weight gain. And so then that happened, and, which then made me more depressed. And, but overall, yeah, I mean, it's, lamotrigine has just been a life-saving drug for me.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. I think it's great that maybe someone will hear this and know there's something that might help, because I just know bipolar, and I know there's different kinds of bipolar and everything, but I think that some of the comics that we have lost, that's because of bipolar disorder. Is it called a disorder, or what is it called?
Yeah, it's a disorder. I mean, they used to call it manic depression, and now it's bipolar. Sometimes called bipolar depression. But yeah, and for the longest time, the only way to treat it was they gave everybody like really high doses of lithium, which made people, just feel like dull and numb and emotionless. And it led many people to go off of it because they said, well, yeah, I'm not thinking about suicide all the time, but I also don't like feeling like a zombie. So they would go off of the drug, and then, that's when bad things happen. And lithium is one of those drugs that people have learned how to use it better. Now they've realized that, in many cases, less is more, rather than these high doses, and using it just tiny amounts of it, to help people to improve the effectiveness of other drugs that they're already on.
Are there any other things that are common knowledge, like dietary, exercise? I don't know. And then, of course, I want to get to the humor part too. I don't know if Tromedy is something that, like, doing comedy and expressing this in a comedic way. But before we get to the Tromedy, I'm just curious to know, I mean, just for my mental health, I know, just basics, I get, enough sleep, get some exercise. I love to eat sort of low on the food chain and clean or diet. For me, I feel better, but that's me. I don't know. Are there common things like that? Or I don't know. Is there anything that triggers, like, how about sugar? I don't know. I have ADHD and I try to watch the sugar. I don't know. Is there anything else like that?
Yeah, I mean, just in general, like, good nutrition, exercise, and sleep, with sleep probably being, the most important. And unfortunately for people with bipolar, the most often neglected. And so, it's, sleep can do as much for your mental health as medication can.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's huge.
And so now I haven't seen your act in a long time. So I'm curious, are you doing any, I call it, Tromedy, about your mental health or other things? Like, are there any bits that come to mind that you're doing that express some of your struggle?
Yes. So, one of the things that I think is cool about how comedy has changed from when I was doing it before is, before it was much more sort of like, jokey joke, and now people are telling more stories. It's more personal, and with exceptions, of course, but I really like that aspect of it, and I've been trying to. I didn't want to do anything that I had done before, so I said I'm going to just only do new stuff, because I mean anybody who's still doing a joke like from the 90s is really lame.
Oh,
do you see what I did there?
I felt it. Oh, the shame.
You see what I did?
Hey, but but then again, if it's such an awesome joke that transcends time, maybe you can, and you add nuance to it and bring it into the 21st century. Yeah.
But the first time I middled when I was coming back and had to do 30 minutes, Josh was like, hey, come to Louisville with me and middle. And I had just been, coming back to Comedy Works and doing like open mic nights and stuff. And he said, do you have 30 minutes? I said, oh yeah, of course. Because that's what we all say. And the answer is always like, can you do 2 hours? And like, yeah. And then you hang up the phone. You're like, fuck, what am I going to do? And so I said, yeah, no problem. And then we were on stage and I hit like 22 minutes and I was totally out. And so I was like, all right, well, it's time to go back to the old and just as much old stuff as I could remember. But so trying to be more personal. I've done some stuff around just kind of mental health, more broadly around my bipolar, but also just about a lot of painful things in my life, like my mother's Alzheimer's, and doing stuff about that. I've really struggled with getting weight off, and probably my biggest struggle for the last 6-7 years. And I've been successful in that, but it was really a brutal emotional thing, and so I've been talking a lot about that. And then I really in one of the jokes that I'm doing. Actually about hemorrhoids, which is also a true bit.
Wait, did you say hemorrhoids?
I did say hemorrhoids.
Oh,
yes.
okay. I just want to make sure I understood you.
No, I had to have hemorrhoids surgically removed like 2 years ago, and it was the worst, absolutely the worst thing I've ever gone through. And talk about like a wake up call for your health. Having have your ass operated on, and the recovery is unbelievable. But there's a part in there which is true that during like 3 days after it, I became very suicidal just because the pain was so bad. And I wouldn't take painkillers.
Because you didn't want to get addicted to painkillers?
Yeah, exactly. And because I have that kind of personality, and so recovering from this major surgery, and just like Advil it was brutal, and so I became very suicidal for all kinds of reasons. I thought I need to end this again, and so yelling on stage. I turned to that part of it. I talk about that I got suicidal, but I have a joke there, and I really struggled a lot with that. Like, okay, wait, I'm a mental health advocate. I have a TED talk on this stuff. Spoken globally on mental health, and now I'm in my act. I'm going to do a joke about suicide. I mean, I've done suicide prevention trainings, like hundreds and hundreds of them. And I really struggle with that. And I talked to a lot of people about it. And I thought about, is this hurting people? Am I sort of, going against how we approach stand-up comedy, which is like, hey, if you try to avoid anything that might offend any person in the audience, you're not going to have an act. And so I decided to keep the joke in, and in part because it's a very funny joke. It always gets a big laugh. And for a while I was feeling, guilty about it. And there was one time when I could see somebody in like the first, row or two, who very clearly like winced when I said it. I was like, oh wow, there's suicide in her family,
Yeah.
and I just hurt this person, and that's not why we do this. And yet I talked to a number of people and continue to do that joke. We've always said we've been trained as comics that you can't just cater to the one person in the room. And other people have said, no, I'm actually glad you do that joke, because the reason that people take their lives is because it's not okay to talk about suicide. And so the more that people say the word and whatever. So I guess a long-winded way of saying that, yes, I do talk about those things, and I struggle with it. But the gist of it is that I went out into the garage to kill myself, and I got into the car and I started it up, and I sat there, and then 9 hours later I was like, oh shit, why do I have a Tesla?
Yeah.
Because there's no emissions, and it always gets a big laugh, and so. But yeah, I mean, I struggle with it, and I think for any of us, I mean, you look at like Gary Gulman.
I think it's a great bit. I mean, who used to do that bit about try to kill themselves in the garage with their car, and then it was a parking garage. But it doesn't. To me, it doesn't.
Gary,
that feels like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You have something about Gary Gulman?
No, but yeah, well, like he did the thing about he wanted to kill himself, but he didn't want to write an essay. There's no like one right or wrong answer on like, should I do this particular bit? I mean, there are some absolutes, right? Like saying N-word or something like that. But for the most part, there aren't absolutes. And I think what's important is that we make a thoughtful decision, and say, at least it's well thought out. And I've decided to do it, and I've decided to do it for these reasons. And it's not like there's sort of any holiness to it or anything. It's just telling a funny joke that gets a laugh. And, it's like I wrestle with it. Yeah.
Do you ever drop in afterwards? Because I drop in on stuff, and I used to on that bit about the guy, I'm like, because I get really like, I do get very concerned. Like, okay, just know that, he's not successful when he starts to shoot himself in the head with a nail gun. I don't know why. I need to take care of people. And also, like, I do a joke about adoption. My son's adopted, or as he says, I bought him. Yeah. Now, I do it like he says that because that empowers him. But I also say, I am this kind of person. I just can't stand it if I have wounded an adoptee in the audience or an adoptive parent. So I'm like, hey, if you're an adoptee or an adoptive parent, just know it's a journey of love. Although I did have a Groupon. I mean, it's like, I kind of do this back and forth, and I go, and then I actually drop in and really like, I love talking about how much I love my son, and he changed my life. And so I don't know, maybe I'm too sentimental or something, but I will kind of, I'll do the bit, but then I'll do a little follow up, like, hey, just so you know.
Yeah.
I used to say it even with that nail gun thing. I go, please remember, it always gets better, or something like that. I'll throw that in there just to acknowledge this is real. Maybe I get too real. That's always been my thing, is getting a little too real. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not even sure I'm doing stand-up comedy. I've always wondered that myself. Like, what am I doing? Is this even stand-up comedy that I do?
but that's why it's so great, is that it's not defined for us. We define it. We define it when we walk out on stage, and we make the choices, and then the audience tells us if those were good choices or not, right? And so like just very recently, I went out and I have a long bit about trying to lose weight and being unsuccessful. And so I was planning to do that bit, and we always say, okay, here's what I'm going to do for my 10 minutes or whatever tonight. And I walk out, and right as I go out, there's two people in the very front row who are morbidly obese, and I like probably 400 pounds easily. And it was like, wow, like I am going to be looking them in the face, and everybody else can see them, because they're in the front row. And so it was just this like split second, because you don't have time to really think about it. It's like, am I committed to this material or not? And can I do this in a way that I hope is not going to inflict pain, or also hope that, the rest of the crowd doesn't, look at me as like, you asshole, like, how could you do this? And I did the bit, and it worked. I had to be like more careful and sort of coaxing about it. And they actually came up to me afterwards and thanked me and said, you described our journey and our struggles with weight. And we really felt heard and we felt understood because you were talking so openly about it. And thank you for that. And I was like, holy shit, because when I saw them walking up to me, I was like, oh God, I totally screwed this up and I have just ruined some lives. But yeah, I mean, it's,
That's beautiful.
Those are the ones you see, but you walk out there,
Yeah.
you don't know how many people are out there adopted or how many people might be sitting in the crowd that have, fired 19 nails into their skull. And
I always do. Like that bit used to be such a long chunk. I mean, I used to add all kinds of parts about, people, anybody out there clapping with one hand or whatever. I love the surprise of my dry bar comedy special. That's my style, is to mainly talk about my own stuff. And I talk about the adoption and codependency and alcoholism in my family and my lazy eye. And it's like, those are the comments. Like the comments I get in the feed on the YouTube clips are just, I also have this, I also have that, or I got this beautiful long email from somebody up in Plattsburgh, New York, who said, I can't believe you talked. I never hardly laugh at comedians. And I laughed so hard tonight because I felt so seen with my codependency and this and that. So isn't that beautiful? I mean, that's to me, it makes, I guess it's my age or I mean, it's beautiful at any age, but I think right now I would rather connect with a handful of people on a very deep level. And I've got enough material that I can crowd please on the rest of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, to me, those people that are super touched and feel known and celebrated, that just makes my day and my week, and sometimes my whole life, just we can, that's why I'm doing this podcast. I'm hearing from, a handful of people that this is making a difference. And I mean, that feels important.
It is. It really is.
I'm excited that you're doing, I can't wait to see you. You're doing a show tonight. I don't know that I'm going to get back. I did like 7 shows in the last four days, and I'm like, I think I'm going to stay home tonight, but I sort of want to come. I want to come see you, but anyway.
Well,
yeah.
When I quit again, then you'll only have to wait 10 years, and then I'll be back. So,
okay.
It's because that's how I roll.
Yeah. Oh man, I will be rolling, on a walker. At that point, I have to admit, sometimes if I see a lot of, I used to do this joke. I used to open with this joke about, flying to Florida. Like, yeah, y'all look very young. Of course, last week I was in Florida, and then and this literally happened one time. I was on a flight to Miami, and it did look like, I didn't see one person who did not have white hair. Did not have white hair. I think I said it right. But anyway, point is, I used to if anyone needs a little extra time pre-boarding, you may come to our gate now. And then I would do this joke about the walker fights, like the walker fights, get back, tennis balls are flying. I don't know. So if I see walkers sometimes, I don't know. Either I include them and I'm like, I bet you've been in a walker fight, or, I don't know. I get a little nervous too if you see, because I think it is the difference of not just them being there, but them being seen there. And that feels like you're punching down, Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the function of age I was talking about, in growing older is I think for the most part, people get, we grow up in some ways, and you become a little bit more, sensitive to like, am I, how is this landing? Whereas when you're younger and you're first starting out, the only yardstick is, are they laughing or not? And so it's like, yeah, if they're laughing, then I don't give a fuck if I hurt feelings. That's how we all are when we're young, and you want to be like edgy and, and if you offend some people, well, good. Then it tells you you're dancing right up against that line, where you should be. And I don't think that it's that we get soft as we get older, but I do think that, because there's still plenty of things in my act that, you could pick apart and say, well, that's, really insensitive or whatever. But I think that they're more thoughtful, deliberate decisions than they were before, at least for me.
Yeah, I relate to that. I want to hear about your speaking. Where do you speak, and what are you speaking on?
So I speak like all over, but it used to be that more like fundraisers and and stuff like that for mental health type organizations. There's been so much effort put into reducing the stigma around mental health in the last, decade or two. And that has been very successful. I mean, the stigma still exists, but nothing like it used to. And so as a result, and I think that the pandemic magnified this, that everybody really became, sort of, keenly aware of the role that mental health and mental illness is playing in everybody's lives and on a societal level as well. And so now it's, to say it, in a crass way, mental health is hot. Like everybody wants to talk about it. So I'm getting, talks like I just booked for the American Legal Administrators National Conference. So like people who run law offices, a convention for web designers and one for video game programmers. I did the National American Craft Spirits Association, so craft distillers. So every industry has been impacted in really unique, different ways. Dentists and bartenders, and kind of you name it. But people want to talk about it. It goes back to what we were saying just a minute ago, that people want to be understood, they want to be heard, and they want to be validated. And so that's been really, really cool to just come in and say, okay, now there's these group of distillers that want to talk about their mental health. And so I'm going to spend a lot of time, and I do put a lot of time into really understanding their industry and talking to people as I'm putting these talks together and stuff. So
isn't that fun? I do the same thing. I do a ton of pre-event interviews. I love, and I have a, whatever, all that spectrum of clients that you mentioned, I also apply the power of humor presentation to. And isn't it a blast to learn? I didn't know why India pale ales, I didn't understand why there's more hops in those, because of the way they had to get transported across the ocean, and it was a preservative.
Yeah.
And all. I mean, I love learning all these things that we would never get an opportunity. It's almost like back in the day in the 90s when we were out driving everywhere, and when am I going to see, when am I going to go to Boise, Idaho, really, or these really random Beeville, Texas. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just amazing to me, or Iceland, or when I was doing USO tours. So it's similar, isn't it? Where we get to research these different industries and learn the background on them.
Totally. I mean, as a traveling comic, I mean, we all know that one of the, easiest ways to get a laugh when you're on the road is to do local stuff. Because people are like, oh my God, they took the time. They looked at our newspaper. They looked, at whatever. And so they're doing Omaha jokes. And it really is the same way. People are just so appreciative and grateful that, wow, they took the time, and so I would much rather do that, even though we could all still get booked and say, okay, here's my 4 canned speeches that I do, and I just give the same thing everywhere. But for me, it's part intellectual curiosity and part just I want to. I'm not doing this just for money. I really, I want to have an impact. I want
exactly. Yeah.
I want this to mean something other than, I flew in and gave a talk and then left.
Yeah. And do you ever call, I do about, I'll say 3 to 5 attendees. I ask them to connect me with 3 to 5 attendees that I just do a phone interview with and ask them
all the time.
But then you can really put yourself in their shoes and imagine what it's like and apply your knowledge that you have and all the coping skills you have. And are you
exactly?
Yeah. When you're talking about mental health, where are you getting your information? I know you have this background that you've studied it. Do you know what I mean? Is there a certain angle to the mental health talk?
Well, there is. I mean, it's kind of multi factors, I guess. I talk a lot about my own story, and I talk a lot about, kind of the stigma. When I was growing up, I had an uncle who had bipolar, manic depressive, but he was, we didn't know that as kids, we just knew that he was, weirdo Uncle Jim, who lived in, in the Twin Cities, and we never saw him. He never, my aunts were always invited to our house for holidays, and we went and saw them and visited my cousins, but he was never invited, and we never went to his house. He was, he was mocked. People made fun of him. And I didn't know any cousins on that side. My cousins from my aunts, but not from his kids. I never met them because he was never around, because we never went to visit him and never invited him to our house. And my dad, used to, how he was batshit crazy. It was the first, time I had ever heard that phrase. And, that he belonged on the funny farm and the loony bin and, all of those things that people say. But I talk a lot about that and about how, as a kid, that's your education and what mental illness is. And so what I learned, what was taught to me was, if there's somebody that has this disease, the way you handle it is to avoid them, to not talk about them. When you do talk about them, to make fun of them and mock them, keep them at arm's length and pretend like they don't exist. It's one
just
of those
heartbreaking to hear. I feel like my heart hurts to hear it, and I'm wondering about your uncle, like what happened to him. Did you ever connect with him? I know I'm distracting you from your thing, but he died. He died when I was young, and so there was never any opportunity for that. And I still don't know. I literally couldn't tell you his kids' names, because there was just absolutely no connection there. And so, but when I got diagnosed, and I talk about this, it was such a significant moment when the psychiatrist in Denver, Doris Gunderson, said, "You have bipolar disorder." I didn't hear that. The words that I heard were, "You are batshit crazy." Oh man.
And that's what I heard, and that's how it landed. And so you can imagine the pain in that, getting that diagnosis. And I was like, oh fuck, now I'm him. Yeah. I'm that guy. And I know how we treated him and how fucked up it was. And that's how people are going to treat me. And I'm going to be the one that's, having those jokes made behind my back. And that was brutal. So I talk a lot about my own story. I talk about my near suicide. And then the second, kind of component is to talk about the larger, big picture, why our mental health system doesn't work and why it, certainly the people that, get help in the system and are fortunate enough to be able to do that can get good care. But in general, our system is failing massively to meet the demand for services for all kinds of reasons, and talk about those. And then talk about how if we're gonna fix this problem, it means all of us becoming that new mental health workforce, and how do we care for one another better?
I love that.
How do we formalize, peer support? How do we take care of one another and of ourselves in such a way that it frees up those spots in therapy and then, with psychiatry, for the people who really need that high level of care. And, because it's a supply and demand thing. And we always focus on, like, how can we get more people to go into the field, get more people to become a psychiatrist, which approach, it's never worked. It's unbelievably expensive, and it never solves the problem anytime there's been any workforce shortage, like nursing, for example. And
oh, really? I didn't know. I'm confused. I did not know this. So getting more people to go into that field doesn't help to have more therapists? This doesn't make sense to me. Why am I the last person to know?
It's just not effective, and it takes too long. So
you mean to fix something today? You're just saying, if we get more therapists out there, it's not gonna.
Yeah, if we're gonna let Congress, debate for 3 years about, should we do student loan forgiveness for more psychiatrists to entice them into the field, and then they allocate money into the next budget cycle, and then $2 billion goes to Health and Human Services or education, and they set up these programs and then start to administer them, and then it attracts more people into the field. And then, 12 years later, we have, a modest increase in the number of psychiatrists.
I gotcha. Also, I'd like to give a shout out. I want to just interrupt for 1 second because as a nurse, some of the best mental health providers are not always psychiatrists, and there are nurse practitioners who can prescribe. And like my son, we were able to find we both have ADHD, and for him to be able to just jump on a telehealth call with a nurse practitioner, I don't know. There's a part of me that I understand what you're saying, but I also feel like I want to just say, look, it doesn't have to be an 8-year program to be an MD to help people.
I totally.
But I love the idea, and also I'm starting to feel like, oh my God, am I supposed to not be going to see a therapist because I have
No,
mild to moderate depression sometimes or anxiety? You know what I'm saying?
Not at all.
I'm getting
Not
into
at
it.
all.
Let's debate.
No, I think you should. And I think, as with so many things, what's important is to recognize your privilege and to be thankful for it.
Oh my
and to
God,
say,
yes, absolutely.
I'm really glad that I have this access and that I can afford it, or I have insurance or whatever, whatever it might be. And to recognize that, most people don't. And so it's okay, because you're giving up that slot doesn't solve the problem. And that's, sort of what I think too often we're led to believe. And so in these talks, I really try to, to focus on like, not sitting back and waiting for, for policymakers in the health profession to solve this problem. Because it's not going to happen if we do that, there really is a role to play for everybody, just in, and looking out for one another.
Yeah, I really want to go back to that because I think I got fixated on a couple of things there where I was like, wait, I don't understand these two things you just said. But your main point was really, how do we help each other? And I guess help fill in the gaps a little bit by knowing do you give advice on how to help somebody if they're having a manic event, or do you go that far as to give like advice of how to help each other?
Yes and no. I mean, how to help somebody when they're, manic. You connect them with somebody who can deliver that level of care. I mean, that's not a do-it-yourself job. But now, how do you talk to them about it? How can you, approach them with kindness? How can you and empathy, and how can you get them to let their guard down enough to allow you to connect them with care? That I definitely talk about. And then there's the self-care, and the probably the best thing we can do for our mental health is free and 100% accessible, and hardly anybody actually does it, which is meditation. And if you can get people just starting and just just scratching the surface and just doing basic box breathing and stuff that everybody can learn and everybody can practice.
Yeah, I'm going to do some right now.
and it's free. It's like it's right there for everybody. But,
yeah.
So talking about those things, but.
And that's one of the things I talk about with humor. Humor is an antidepressant. Humor actually does boost your mood. It does stabilize things. It is a resource. It helps you touch in on a trauma without getting stuck there. I mean, just to throw back into the Tromedy mix with a little bit here. And then the parasympathetic nervous system reset, like you said, the box breathing, or I call it 4x4 breathing. That's an amazing tool that I think people forget. Yeah. I forget. Personally, I forget it. It's like, Nancy, just stop and take a few deep breaths and hold it, and it that can transform, get me out of a trigger for sure. And I don't know how that relates to long term, but it's nice to interrupt something that I might act out on, something either
totally
reactivity and on myself or others.
Well, one of my favorite stories, and I relate this a lot when I talk. I had heard this guy. There's a handful of people who have survived the jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, like I don't know, like less than 30 or something since the bridge jump. Most people die instantly, or they're swept out to sea or whatever. And one of the guys who had survived that jump was talking at this fundraiser, and he was talking about the day that he jumped from the bridge, and he said when he was on the bus going down there on a beautiful Saturday, he said, if one person asks if I'm okay, I won't do it.
Wow. That gives me goosebumps. Oh gosh.
Yeah. Well, just wait. And so he started walking, back and forth on the bridge, and it was a beautiful Saturday. It was, packed with people, and he was realizing, that he was going to jump soon, and he starts to cry, and his eyes are getting like red and puffy. And he's just walking on the bridge, and people would walk by and they'd make eye contact with him, and then they would just keep walking. And nobody said anything to him. I mean, you're on the Golden Gate Bridge with a guy by himself who is crying, right? And nobody stopped. And finally, this woman stopped him, and she tapped him on the shoulder, and he turned around, and she said, "Hey, will you take my picture?" And she handed him her camera. And so he posed her like with the city in the background. And he said, "I knew at that moment that nobody in the world gave a shit about me." So he handed her the camera and immediately leapt over the ledge. And when you think about that and what's in there, he wasn't looking for a therapist. He wasn't looking for medication. He wasn't looking for somebody to take him to the emergency room. He was asking for one person to say, "Are you okay?"
Yeah. One person to say, "I see you."
Yeah. You look like you're in pain. Are you all right? That's all he wanted.
That's all
he needed to keep him from going over the ledge, was just that one simple thing. Now, does that mean that, that we can, take care of, serious mental illness and people with, schizoaffective disorders and bipolar and stuff? Of course not. But for many, many people, that's all they need is just, people don't, nobody wants to die. Like people who kill themselves, they don't want to be dead. Like death is not the intent of most suicides.
They want to be out of pain, right?
They want to be out of pain. That's all it is. Suicide is pain medication, and and I know this because I was right there and where you really come to believe that this pain will not end, and there is no hope to solve it, and therefore I'm going to break the glass and take the option of last resort because I'm in so much pain.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people just want to one little tiny bit of hope. Oh, one person cares about me. That can be enough sometimes. And not enough to cure it or to treat it, but enough to give somebody a pause for a minute to say, yeah, you know what? Maybe I don't need to do that. Maybe I can give some of these other things a try.
And if somebody's listening out there, I mean, I know this is an anonymous, I care about you. Maybe it doesn't mean anything, but this is who we're doing this for. People who are isolated, people who, trauma is such an isolating thing. And so many of and I know there are so many causes for depression and mental health crisis. It's not all trauma related, but I'm just saying, and if you reach out, let me know how I can help, give us an email or send us a message, and we are here.
And more importantly, if you're the person that, doesn't have those things going on, and you see somebody who's sitting at the end of the bar by themselves and they're just, going up and say, hey, I hope things are okay. No one's going to hit you. No one's you're not going to push anybody over a ledge. Just don't, we're so conditioned, and I hypocrite. We all are, right? I can
say that word again because your phone glitched out on the word. I think I know.
I'm a hypocrite, and we all are. And so I can walk through downtown and step over a homeless person on the sidewalk and keep walking because you say, well, if I stopped for every single one, I'd never make it down the block.
I was wanting to ask you about that because I do struggle with, and I do ask higher power to kind of help me on those kind of things because I don't know when is the right time. Sometimes I trust.
Sometimes I'll go buy food and go back, but a lot of times, it's like, I can't deal with this now. I'm going to cross the street, and so I acknowledge the hypocrisy that I have, and that to some extent we all do. Around these things. But we've gone too far with it. And, where we've conditioned ourselves to just sort of ignore everybody else's pain. And that's kind of a dangerous place to be. And so if we can start to pull that back a little bit more and help, just to reach out and, just check in with somebody, and, try to add something to their life, even if it's just that.
And trust your, if they get a nudge. I'm really into these sensitive, I don't know, maybe I think people feel these. If you get a nudge, honor it. If you get a nudge but I don't know, because we kind of talk ourselves out of things sometimes. I always get kind of confused when I don't have, I like when I have stuff in my car that is easy to hand to somebody. Because I don't hand money usually, but I don't always travel with bananas, and I don't think they always want. I don't think they always want bananas. but sometimes I just
around in my glove box.
Sometimes
there's some wipes and a broken cell phone charger. That's all I have.
Or the feeling of panic, I am really an anxious person. Is I can't make something happen in the time before this light changes. So I often will smile and just do a peace sign. And I know that's probably to flash a peace.
Yeah.
Then they flash you back half a peace sign.
there was it was literally just like 2 weeks ago. There was a guy on Colfax, and I drove by, and the light was red, and so I was like kind of right next to him, and he looked at me, like, do you have anything? I was like, I didn't say anything, but I drove away, and I felt guilty, so I went and stopped at Subway, and I bought a sandwich, and went back and to where he was, and I pulled up again. Or I said, hey, I went and got you a sandwich. And he goes, what kind? And I said, turkey. And he goes, fuck turkey. and then the light changed. And so I went home and ate the sandwich. I was just like, wow.
I had a similar thing happen when that's pretty funny though. Fuck turkey. I was like meeting my niece and nephew on the beach near like Los Angeles, one of the like, maybe, I don't know, one of the beaches, doesn't matter. My son and I were on a 30-day camping trip, and I got really good at making dal bhat. She's from Nepal, so it's like lentils and rice and potatoes, and I could do this all on my camping stove at a picnic table. And this guy, comes up wanting a plate of food. I'm happy. I'm here, have a plate of food. And he was so annoyed that it was vegetarian. He was like, no meat. I was like, so I don't know. I mean, it's tricky. It is.
Sometimes beggars literally can be choosers.
Do you ever play this game like, and then what will happen? And then what will happen? Do you ever do that? Where I was driving
totally.
Yeah, when I used to be like, I'm so anxious. I'm going through 2 trials with my sociopathic ex. I have a toddler. I'm a single mom. I'm working 12-hour shifts as a nurse. I'm trying to get out the door. And I literally feel like I might lose my mind. And my son, they're slow. Toddlers, they are just slow. And I'm like, come on, get in the car. Like, what is it? And then what'll happen, Nancy? If you're late to work, I'm going to get written up. I'm going to get fired. And I'm going to be homeless. I'm going to be under a bridge. And no one is going to bring me vegetarian chili.
Yeah.
That kind of would snap me out of like, because I was trying not to put all that horrible energy into my toddler, who he's just having a beautiful day, walking outside, looking at the leaf. There's a leaf. Move.
Right. Oh my God, I remember that, just walking with my kids, and you go down the sidewalk, and like you'd see like an inchworm or something, and you're just like, oh, please God, don't let them see it. It's going to be 15 fucking minutes down watching this inchworm.
God, please don't let them see the wonder of everything. Like we don't have time for the wonder of the world right now. I used to dress my son in like outfits for hiking just to keep him motivated. Like he was a Viking with a sword, and I'd be like, I think there's a dragon around the next corner, just to kind of keep him moving, man. Because
right.
They want to just sit down. Like, it's a hike. Come on. Anyway, back to helping parents. I'm sorry, but single parenting, oh my God, and no one to just hand them to, It's like,
right.
I love that you did that work with moms that, were probably either single moms or not empowered in a lot of ways.
In almost every way, yeah.
Gosh, and to help that makes a difference in a whole generation with the kids that they were raising, I bet.
Totally.
If you get raised, like you said, somebody read to you. Nobody read to me. So I guess I'm bringing it full circle back to where we started. But Matt, I am so grateful you're in the world, and I'm so grateful you were not successful with your suicide attempt. Way to fail. That was a brilliant failure. I'm so glad you failed at that.
Yeah, my follow through has always been suspect.
I love your bit about it. It doesn't feel mean. It feels like a real Tromedy. When you drop in and share that, they know like, okay, this is his joke about his struggle.
Totally.
I think it's great to express it, and it's not punching down at suicidal people. It's just making fun of the fact that you did not succeed.
Parts of that whole experience that I've written. That have never like left my hard drive, and I thought, maybe I'll try to do something with this someday, whether it's talk about it on stage or whatever, but just, like the whole experience of when I went to the gun store to buy a gun, for the purpose of killing myself. And I mean, there's like pretty, some, not at the time, but I mean, there is humor there where I was,
Yeah. Like, tell me.
So one, I had never been, in a gun store before, so I didn't know what to do. And so, one, you go in there and they're like, what kind of gun do you want? And I'm like, I don't know, what's the cheapest gun? And so that raised all kinds of red flags. Right
yeah. All the red flags that the guy misses, right?
Yeah, that they miss. And so that one, and then I'm watching, it was crowded, and I'm watching like the other people at the gun store, like, what are they doing? Because they then hand you the gun. They like open the cylinder to make sure, show you it's not loaded or whatever. And then they hand it to you. And so you like, you put it in your hand, you're like, I'm just trying to pretend like I know what I'm doing. I'm like, oh yeah, like those grips, and
yeah, you're saying that stuff?
No, yeah, totally. And and then I look at the other people and they're all like, holding it up as though they were going to shoot at a target or, somebody, and they're like aiming it at the wall or anything. And I'm thinking, yeah, but I'm not going to do that. I want, like, should I put it in my mouth? And be like, do you have the same thing with a snow nose? And I was like, I was really afraid I was going to like hit one of my fillings, and so I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. That'll, and so I'm like, yeah, all right. I like pretended like I was, shooting the intruder or something. And so I'm like, yeah, this is fine. And then he said, he's like, okay, do you need some ammo? And I said, yes. And he said, well, so do you want like a box of 50 or a box of 100? And I just want to be like, there should be like is there a little fishbowl on the counter where you can just, buy one?
Take a penny, leave a penny.
Yeah. Like buy
take a bullet,
cigarette or something. Yeah. So anyway, just point being,
I love it. I love this. I could. Oh my God, this is going to be a brilliant bit. I mean, this is Tromedy. This is it. I'm talking like you've gotta, and I mean that also goes back to the whole, tying into the gun law. I'm not saying we need new gun laws, but maybe, based on this experience, I had a friend whose house was broken into in Kansas City, and let's just say he's expressive. Let me leave this out. I don't know. I can't be, this is not the 90s. Okay. He told me the story in the 90s, but so this guy, this big man, like breaks into his house and he goes, help, police. He's doing an impression of himself when he did this. And he goes, and then they just looked at him like, and then they just started coiling cords like around his TV and microwave, and they were like a moving team. They didn't move it. They weren't even hustling. They were just going about their business of stealing all of his shit while he's at the top of the stairs going, somebody help. And then he said after they left, he stayed up all night smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee. And he goes, Nancy, I went to the gun shop as soon as they opened, and I was like, give me a gun that'll make a really big hole. and he goes, and they sold it to me, Nancy. They sold it to me right then. And I was like, I mean, I was out of my mind. He goes, I was jittering, I was shaking, like I looked like I was about to go kill someone. Give me a gun. And they gave it to him. And he tossed his salad plate at me and he goes, it'll make a hole the size of this plate. Oh, Danny. That was Danny. But that's what I'm talking about, gun laws, though. Like this guy went in there out of his mind, and you were in there like clearly like, I bet you didn't look well.
No. I was actually crying in the parking lot, and then I stopped crying. So I wasn't crying in the store, but very clearly had been crying. I mean, it's like every warning sign was right there. Like a guy comes in, he's got red eyes, asking for the cheapest gun. And just like, how can we complete this transaction as fast as possible? I mean, you don't have to be trained in anything to know, like, yeah, you know what, we should actually ask some questions here, and maybe try to sell this guy, a kayak paddle or something instead of a gun.
But did you end up buying a gun?
Yeah.
And you left, and then you got close, and I guess I want to know what helped you. What was it? Like, what was it that interrupted it? What helped you? What saved your life?
It was Who Saved My Life.
Who saved your life?
Yeah, so it was the woman who lived next door. She was 70 years old. She had gone through suicide prevention training. I said goodbye to my baby at the time,
Oh my God.
knowing that I was, saying goodbye to him for the last time, and I was going to go home and do it. And she was out gardening, and so the whole way home, I'm just sobbing because I just said goodbye to my son, and I was never going to see him again.
Oh my God.
And she stopped me as I was, going into the front door, and she said, "What's going on?" I said, "Fine." And she knew from the training, like, to ask directly. And she said, "You haven't been yourself lately. I've been worried about you, and what's going on?" And I said, "Nothing. I'm just kind of having a rough morning, but I'm fine." And then she asked me, like, point blank, she said, "Are you going to kill yourself?" And I was like, how the fuck did she just know that?
Wow.
And, yeah, but she knew, and she knew to ask, and which is what you do. I mean, that's the way you intervene, is you ask somebody really directly.
Are you having suicidal thoughts? Is that the way to say it?
Are you going to kill yourself? Are you going to, take your life?
Wow. Now that takes courage. That takes courage. I feel like it's
unbelievable courage, which is just asking that question. Going back to the story of the guy on the bridge, just asking that question is a signal of hope. And I care about you. I care enough about you to ask one of the hardest questions that a human can ask another human. And so because of that, in most cases, when you ask that question to somebody, they answer yes. They'll be honest about it, because they're so caught off guard, and because there's like so much courage behind that question. And so that's what happened. And I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "No, you're actually not. And not today. We're gonna handle this a different way."
Oh my God, I love her.
Yeah.
And I love you. Oh, wow.
And I love you.
I can't believe this. I didn't know any of this. And I'm so glad you're here. And I guess I was in your life at that point when your child was
totally were.
And I didn't know. You were going through.
Nobody knew. No, because we're comics, right? Like nobody's better at hiding pain than we are.
Like,
it's what we do.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad that your neighbor who's 70 also had a lot of intuition too. She just had probably a powerful gut feeling.
Yeah.
I'm so glad she honored her gut and came across the yard.
And so I then went through that same training myself, and now I deliver that same training, for people, and I've had to use that. I mean, I've been her, and there's people, actually, somebody that well, I won't say, but that where I interviewed the same way, and it's played out the exact same way.
Wow.
Said, "Yep, I'm about to do it," and I got in the car, went over there, and came home with the guns, and connected him with got him to the ER and all that stuff, and it's, I mean, I thought about her that whole time. I was like, wow, because I'm scared shitless. And like, what if I fuck this up somehow? So yeah, I mean, she's not with us anymore, but I think about her all the time.
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. Can we all get trained in this? Is this like CPR training that people can do? You know what I mean? Like, is this something that the average person could get trained in this?
Yeah, anybody can get trained in it. It is like CPR in a lot of ways, actually, in that, the idea of CPR is not to, you don't have to be a heart surgeon to save somebody who's having a heart attack.
That's right.
All you have to do is recognize the warning signs, recognize what's happening, and connect them with care immediately. And suicide prevention is exactly the same thing. It's actually kind of, the training, you go through it and you're like, wow, that was astonishingly simple. But it's just about like, hey, what are the warning signs? How do people, telegraph their intentions when they think that they're hiding it, but they're not, if you know what to look for. And then how do you get them, to somebody who can, just how do you get them to, convince them to let you call 988 when you're sitting there with them? And, and then you don't have to do anything else because they'll quarterback it. They'll tell you where to go and where to take them and everything.
Well,
but it's really just about the courage to ask that question.
Thank you. I'm going to put in the show links. Maybe there's a website. If you send me a website, or you know what I mean, like where people, there might even be a YouTube, because I've trained on CPR on YouTube. So maybe there's even a YouTube tutorial or something like that.
There's all kinds of stuff out there. Yeah, great resources where people can get that training in.
Yeah, so let's put that in there, and hey, let's save some lives. Matt, how can we're doing it. We're doing it directly, indirectly, and sometimes just in a really silly way. We save lives with our silliness. And Matt, how can people reach you? What's your website, and how do you like to be contacted?
People can just find me on either LinkedIn is usually a good way. I am on a social media break, so they won't find me on.
So how do you spell your name, Matt?
Matt Vogl, no E, Vogl.
V-O-G. That's what I have in my phone. I was looking at that going, I was sure I left out a vowel or something.
Yeah.
So it's Matt Vogl, MattVogl on LinkedIn, which is where, you know what? I need to work on my LinkedIn. I think that's where the real professionals hang out.
I hate all of it, but actually the best thing, just email me. It's just mattvogl@gmail.com.
Okay.
And that's always the best way.
All right. Well, thank you for taking all this time. And
thank you. This is so cool.
I feel so much closer to you now, and I hope that our friendship will pick up the pace a little bit. Maybe we go on a hike, hang out a little bit. And
let's not push it. No, I would not.
That's why I love you. All right. So I'll see you in another 10 years, dude. And have break a leg tonight. Have fun. And thanks. I never can end these. This is where I always have trouble. Would you have any advice on how to end a podcast?
Yeah, just hang up.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Bye.
I'd like to thank my guest, Matt Vogl. Go find Matt on LinkedIn at Matt. I don't know how LinkedIn works. Anyway, Matt, Mattvogl. As always, I want to thank my son, Nathaniel Norton, for helping me out with the music and the technology. He's my in-house technical support. And thank you, the listener. Please reach out if you're having any kind of suicidal thoughts and you need support. I guess 988 is the number to call, 988. Do not hesitate. Just dial 988. Get support. Do not do it. It is going to get better. I know this from my own experience. Everybody says it. Everybody says it. Everybody that doesn't do it says it gets better. So know that it does. And lots of love, big hugs. Thanks for tuning in to Tromedy. We have a new episode every Tuesday, Tromedy Tuesdays. And remember, find something to laugh about. No matter what, keep laughing. Tromedy is a higher power production.